I'm reading from Matthew 5:13-20. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The word of God for the people of God.
I know it's a few weeks off yet, but do you mind if I talk about Lent? I know, it's just reminding you that it's coming, isn't it? Sorry. But Lent is coming, and usually I think people kind of go, Lent. You know, because it's that time, as a kid, I always remember it's that time we got the really sad hymns that are all in a minor key. Everything's purple. Not there's anything wrong with purple. But it just, everything seems darker and quieter, and there's no hallelujahs, because it's Lent. And you have to give up stuff for Lent. Or if you're really lucky, this is exciting. Remember the things where you put the coin in, like it had a little slot for coins each day, and you could put, I'm old enough that it was a dime. But I think at one point it's probably a penny, wasn't it? But that would be fun, kind of. But Lent was never really very interesting. And I'm sad about that because I realized at one point that I don't think Jesus went into the wilderness to be tempted. I don't think that's the most important part of the story. I think Jesus went into the wilderness for the same reason any of us would go into a wilderness. It's because you want to spend some time by yourself to think and reflect. Maybe wonder about yourself a little bit, what you want to do. And, of course, Jesus goes into the wilderness when? Right before he goes off to minister. Right at the beginning of his ministry. So I think that's why he went into the wilderness. And I think that's a really good thing for us to remember because that's what we should be doing with Lent. We should be, now I don't have to do a sermon on the first Sunday of Lent. I just gave it away. What you should be doing with Lent is spending time with yourself, reflecting on yourself. That's, I think, the most important thing about Lent is it's a time for reflection, for wondering about yourself, about your relationship with God, what you want to do with things. Because, of course, at the end of Lent is Holy Week and Easter, resurrection. And so it's an opportunity to wonder. That's a wilderness experience. That's why people go into the wilderness, isn't it? To wonder, to meditate. That's what a wilderness is for. And I think that's great. As I was thinking about this the other day, I realized, of course, that that's not always great because it kind of feels like we're already in a wilderness now. To me, it feels like we're in a wilderness because I think the moment you start excluding people because of where they come from or their religion, you start pushing people away because of what they think, because it's not what you think, you're creating a wilderness around yourself. The moment you start building a wall around you, you've isolated yourself from everyone. And that is not a good thing. That doesn't protect. It's not about security then. It isn't, because it keeps you from the rest of the world. I think we think that it's about safety and security. We think it's about protecting ourselves. And initially, maybe it does. Maybe it does help us to feel safer, because you know that the real thing about protecting yourself has nothing to do with what you do. It's got to do with how you feel. If you feel safe, whatever you just did is justified because you feel safe. But there's a point, I hope, at which we realize that isn't just making us safe, it's excluding people from our lives. It's keeping us from other people. That wall isn't about safety, it's a barrier. It keeps people out. And to me, that creates a wilderness. And it's not a wilderness in which you can spend time thinking about yourself and wondering about your relationship with God and the world. That's a wilderness in which you simply disconnect from everyone else, including God. Because the greatest way to find more about our own relationship with God is to be with others. Because we're built for relationship. We're meant to be in relationship. Even Jesus going into the wilderness was for a time, a period of time. And I think Jesus went into the wilderness to wonder about himself, to wonder about, what am I doing? What am I going to be doing? He encounters some other things, particularly some temptations, we call them. I don't want to talk about those because then I'll have absolutely nothing to talk about in Lent. But the point is that when we create a wilderness that allows us to wonder and think about ourselves and our relationship with others, that's one thing. But when we do it in order to cut ourselves off, that's not. That makes a wilderness. And it's a wilderness that doesn't cause growth. It doesn't encourage wonder. It just leads to death. Truly. I know you're thinking by now, it's like 3 weeks till Lent. Surely this has something to do with today. Yes, it does. It does. The idea of Jesus saying that we're like salt and light because we bring seasoning to the world, or we enlighten, is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. That's how you're salt and light. It is. But there's another part of that. And that is that this is the 21st century. Salt's on every table. It's in foods. It's in foods you don't want it to be in. It's in everything. It's so common, we use it to put on the ground, right? When it's icy. That's how common it is. And with just a flick of a switch, we can have light if it's dark. And not even if it's like really dark, but if it's just like, it's like twilight, it's starting to get a little bit dark, I can't really see, we'll turn a light on. It's easy. You can do that. In the first century, not so much. In fact, in the first century, salt was very valuable. In fact, more often than not, it was only rich people that had it. It was valuable. And light, if you couldn't afford to have oil for a lamp, you were in the dark. You might as well go to bed when the sun goes down and get up when the sun comes up, because that's the only light you're going to see. It was valuable. So are you. Everyone is valuable. Everyone. Because everyone is like salt. Everyone is like light. I don't for a moment think that Jesus was just talking specifically to a small group of people when he used those images. We all are. Every last one of us. We have the power to affect the environment around us. We also have the power to allow the environment around us to affect us. It's a two-way street. That's how it works. So it's not just about the effectiveness of salt and light. It's about how valuable that is, and how valuable it is to recognize that everyone is valuable. You don't exclude people because you don't like what they say. You need to hear what they say. In fact, you need to understand what they say in order to decide whether or not you agree with it, don't you? We need interaction. We need engagement. We need to understand what other people are thinking. We need to know them. This looks like a room of Star Trek people. I'm sure it is. Right? I'm not the only person this week. I read a lot of blogs in the week, and I'm not the only person to have noticed this. I'm sure you all know the Enterprise has shields, right? And they don't just come up because Captain Picard, for instance, or Captain Kirk says, shields. They come up automatically when the computer on the ship senses danger. They come up. And the thing about the shields is you can see through them, but you can't get through them. So you still have engagement, but you're protected. Ah, interesting. Here's the thing. I'm sure you'll remember this episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think it was in season 4. Anyway, there's a story where the Enterprise goes to investigate because another ship was destroyed by an energy wave, and they go to investigate. And it turns out there was one survivor. It was a little boy. Does anyone know the episode I'm talking about? Anyone? Okay. And the little boy survived. And so the Enterprise gets there, and this energy wave comes in over the ship. And so they increase the power of the shields to defend themselves. And each time the wave hits the ship, they increase the power to the shields until finally they put everything from the engine into the shields. And the moment the captain says that, the little boy remembers something. He remembers that was the last thing he heard before the ship was destroyed. And so they drop the shields, and the wave just rolls right over them. Sometimes when you keep building the walls and you build them higher and thicker, you're not defending yourself. You're just not. You're encouraging the world to come to you. And maybe sometimes the best thing is to drop the shields and engage the world. Maybe that's what Jesus had in mind here. I don't think he was a Star Trek fan, but that's neither here nor there. I think that's what Jesus has in mind here. Go and be salt and light. Because that city on a hill that you can see, because it's sitting on a hill, it wouldn't be nearly as easy to see if it wasn't colorful and bright and rich with all of the skills and gifts that the people who live there bring to it. Would it? That's what makes the city, that image of a city on a hill, so powerful. Is that it's not just about a bunch of buildings that sit on a high point of land. It's about the people who live there that create together this amazing city that's full of diversity, that's full of color and light, that's full of amazing things. That's what creates it, is us together. And you can only do that by recognizing that we're all salt and light. All of us. That's how we'll build it.